Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. And now it's my turn. Someone else's hand on her waist. That's how I first saw it. The kind of casual, intimate gesture you notice only if you've invested years into knowing how she moves, how her body leans, the shape of her silhouette. I remember it like an echo in my mind. I was coming up the aisle of a small grocery store, maybe half a dozen items in my cart, when my gaze slid over to the pharmacy section. There she was, my wife, standing by the register. But it was his hand. Tanned, confident, fingers splayed just beneath the curve of her rib cage, that grabbed me by the throat. I froze so completely I might have blended with the shelves. Time clotted around me, thick as blood. She pretended not to see me, or more likely, had no clue I was there. They'd whispered a moment, close, too close, and then parted like it was nothing. Like they'd done it before. Like a husband might place a hand on his wife's waist if he saw her in public. I think back to that moment sometimes, to the clarity of mind I had not to confront them right there. Anger threatened to roar up from my gut. My heart hammered so loud my ears filled with its pounding. But rage turned into something else. A biting, steely calm. I told myself, Rick, breathe. Keep breathing. I set the items in my cart aside, walked over to the far exit, and left without being seen. At least that's how I imagined it from the outside. Cool-headed. In truth, I was holding on to my composure with trembling fingers. If I'd confronted them in that instant, I don't know what I would have done. I'm not a violent man, not typically, but betrayal has a unique smell, like rusted iron and old regret. It scorches a path in your mind, and I could feel it burning behind my eyes, clouding my judgment, but not so much that I forgot who I am. My father taught me that a real man picks his battles and picks them well. So I waited. I waited, though the moment I got to the car, my hand shook so bad I had to grip the wheel, white-knuckled, and keep telling myself to calm down. I tried to breathe in, breathe out. No success. My right fist slammed the dash once, just once, and left a crack in the plastic. Silence filled the air again, and I realized how quickly rage can fade into something more lethal, a quiet knowledge that your life is no longer what you thought. I started the engine, turned on some sports radio, trying to anchor myself in normalcy, and drove off. The announcers were yammering about a playoff game, but all I heard was static. My mind kept replaying that scene, her eyes darting around, the quick flush on her cheeks, his hand pulling her gently toward him as if they'd rehearsed it. I never confronted her that night. Instead, I said nothing. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe a colleague, a friend, but the image wouldn't let go of me. It was as though I'd glimpsed an X-ray of my marriage, the skeleton beneath, all the fractures no one else could see. At home, she was as bright and chatty as ever. Christina, my wife, had started cooking dinner by the time I walked in. I'd caught the aroma of cilantro and lime from the foyer. She looked over her shoulder as she chopped, gave me a quick smile. "You okay?" she asked. She was wearing that white blouse I liked, the one that hinted at the curves beneath without flaunting them. Her hair was pinned up, just the way she kept it when trying a new recipe or focusing on her ad campaigns. Brown eyes sparkling, a question in them. Something about me must have seemed off. "Just tired," I lied. She didn't ask more. She never was good at reading my face when she didn't want to see it. She turned back to the cutting board and talked about her day, about a new client in her advertising agency and how demanding they were. I nodded, forcing a small grin now and then. I remember stirring the rice absent-mindedly, hearing the spoon scrape the pot, thinking, that hand. I saw that damn hand, right at your waist. It might have been the next day or the day after. I'm not sure. I'd begun losing track of time. I do remember the pharmacy call. Something about a prescription. She'd left a slip on the kitchen table, half covered by a stack of mail. The label wasn't addressed to Christina Evans, but to a Christine Morales, her maiden name. It struck me as odd, but she said some nonsense about updating records. I let it slide. Then I saw the prescription, birth control pills. My mind reeled. We'd once talked about having a second child, though the one we had, or so I believed, was enough for me. So why birth control? If we weren't actively avoiding pregnancy, well, who exactly was she avoiding it with? That question lodged in my chest. I carried it around like a shard of broken glass, cutting me from the inside out. I tried to stay rational, though the swirl of emotions gnawed at me. We were married, for God's sake. If she wanted birth control, it was never an issue. She and I used to be so transparent. Used to. The dryness in her voice when she said, "Don't worry about it," lit the final fuse of suspicion. I decided I had to learn more. The next couple weeks felt like a shift in the Earth's rotation. I hardly recognized my own life. The boy who called me Dad was all energy, bounding around our living room with his toy planes, excited to show me everything. I'd spent 10 years under the impression I was his father. The idea that maybe I wasn't never even crossed my mind. But I was about to test that assumption. I went to one of those discreet paternity test clinics, the kind that's set up in an office building where the staff offers you coffee and tries to act like it's no big deal. I felt sick even handing over the sample. I wanted to snap the swab in half and storm out, but I couldn't. My life was unraveling, and I needed proof. This was the slow torture, waiting for numbers on a page that could either confirm or destroy everything I believed about my family. While the test was processing, I observed her from a distance. I checked her phone logs when I got a chance, but found nothing conclusive. She'd grown cautious, or maybe just cunning. Our dinners became stilted affairs, me pushing the food around my plate, her filling the silence with talk of deadlines. Our son, no, I can't call him that anymore, can I? The child who lived under my roof seemed blissfully unaware, or so I hoped. In the rare moments I looked into his eyes, I tried to see a reflection of myself. But the seeds of doubt had taken root. I thought of my hair color, my eyes, the shape of my jaw. Did he have any of them? I can't describe the day I got the results except to say I felt my heart become a stone. The sheet read, "Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at that zero so long I went numb. The nurse in the office was telling me something about confidentiality, but I heard none of it. I just left. I got in my car and sat there, locked in place, watching the sun sink behind glass buildings. My entire existence had just been overshadowed by a single digit, a zero that spelled out what my mind already guessed, but my soul refused to accept. I remember forming a fist around the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. The anger was there, but it was something else, like a bitter, hollow laugh building at the back of my throat. That's when the black humor started creeping in. I recall whispering to no one, "Guess my swimmers never had a shot." And I barked out a laugh so savage it scared me. Everything after that came in waves. I'd watch her leave for work dinners. I'd see the subtle touches she tried to hide, rearranging her blouse, smoothing her hair before heading out. That faint excitement in her step. The same excitement I once inspired, now transferred to someone else. Then, one day, I found a receipt from a high-end apartment complex, suspiciously in some man's name, Damien Brooks. The same last name I'd glimpsed on the pharmacy bag. My blood turned cold. I understood now. The lease she was paying wasn't ours. She was visiting him. My wife, the mother of a child who wasn't mine, was living a life with another man behind my back. People ask how I kept my cool. Truth is, I didn't. I raged inside, but I was in no hurry to blow everything up publicly. I needed a plan. This wasn't just about me losing a wife or a child who never belonged to me in the first place. This was about being lied to, used. I needed to take back control in a world that suddenly felt aimless. So I bided my time, masked everything with polite smiles. The nights were the hardest. She'd slip into bed, sometimes giving me a goodnight kiss on the cheek. I couldn't stand the smell of her shampoo. It felt invasive, reminding me of what she shared with him. I'd often roll away, feigning sleep. Some nights I'd end up on the couch, staring at the dark ceiling, anger throbbing behind my eyes like a migraine. I used to wear a watch, an elegant piece with a leather band, a gift from an old mentor. After the paternity test, I stopped wearing it. The ticking of the second hand felt like the beat of my own condemnation, counting down the lies. Instead, I wrote a tiny note on a slip of paper and taped it across the watch face. Time does not heal. I left it on my nightstand for her to see, or not see. I wasn't sure if she even cared enough to read it. Revenge is an odd word. People think it's about hurting the other person, but it's more about carving out a path so you can breathe again. Liberation, in a twisted sense. I didn't want to threaten or assault her or the man she replaced me with. I wanted to change the gravitational pull around her, so that every step forward felt heavier, more difficult. And I knew exactly how. I have connections in business consulting, people who owe me favors from when I saved their necks on big contracts. They're not criminals. They're not thugs. They're men and women with power in certain circles. Legal, financial, immigration. I arranged a few calls. In hushed, late-night conversations, I asked them to quietly review certain sponsorship deals she was counting on. Christina had leveraged her name and some joint property for a large ad campaign. A friend of mine in legal discovered she was using my signature on some partnership documents. He invalidated them without a word to me. Another friend reached out to her credit card company, flagged suspicious activity. It all happened behind closed doors, just the slow turning of gears. Nothing illegal, but enough to cause friction, enough to make life difficult for her. Each rung of support that she'd used to build her secret empire started to crumble. Meanwhile, at the house, I kept up a front of normalcy. I'd ask about her day, show polite interest, share polite dinners. Her phone grew busier, messages pinging about unexpected changes in her finances. She'd curse under her breath, that hissed, "Damn," or the occasional, "Oh God, what now?" The man she was seeing must have been picking up the slack, but I doubted he had the resources I did. He was well off, sure, but not in the subtle ways that matter, the 1,000 invisible threads that hold one's professional life together. Eventually, she realized something was systematically going wrong. I'd see her pace across the living room, phone pressed to her ear, voice trembling. "What do you mean, the account is frozen?" Or, "That can't be right. I've got all the paperwork." I'd sit in the armchair, flipping through a newspaper as though I couldn't hear a thing. After she finished, she'd look at me, eyes searching for some reassurance. I'd merely shrug, as if to say, "That's rough. Sorry to hear it." Inside, I felt that small flicker of savage satisfaction. I know some reading this might judge me. Why not just file for divorce? Walk away? Because it's never that simple. This was my life she took a chainsaw to. This was my role as a father, my marriage, my sense of self. And I wasn't going to let her sail into the sunset with everything intact, leaving me to pick up the shards alone. Not without feeling at least some of the weight. Maybe you'll call it petty, but I call it balancing the scales. And at the end of the day, if I felt no relief, I might have lost my sanity. The actual confrontation happened weeks later. Even now, I can't recall if it was morning or evening. I just remember the way the hallway light cast shadows across the living room. She was rummaging through papers, cursing more forcefully than usual. I realized I was done tiptoeing. So I said, "Need help with something?" She flinched, turned to me. "You wouldn't understand," she snapped. Then she sighed, tried to soften her tone. "I'm sorry, Rick. It's just, my business is. Everything's falling apart right now. I'm scrambling to fix it." She paused, eyes flicking to my face, probably noticing how expressionless I'd become. Did you do something? Like anything with the accounts we share?" I let out a low chuckle. It was the darkest laugh I'd ever made. "What makes you think I did anything?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, uncertain. The tension in the room felt thick as tar. I stepped closer, not threatening, but direct. How's your lover? That new fiancé of your fantasies. Damien, right? Her expression collapsed, eyes wide. She tried to deny it with a stammered, "What are you talking about?" But it was pointless. My stare tore through her. She realized I knew everything. She glanced at the hallway leading to our child's bedroom, biting her lip. I whispered, "Don't worry, he's not mine, remember?" Her face turned ashen. "Rick, listen, I'm sorry," she started, voice trembling. It just happened. I didn't know how to. It didn't just happen. You chose this." My voice was eerie in its calm. "You chose him, behind my back, for God knows how long. You gave me someone else's child, lied to me for years, and let me call him my son." My chest constricted around the word son. I swallowed hard, pressing back the surge of pain. Then I said, almost tonelessly, "You have any idea what that did to me?" She began to cry, or at least her eyes welled up, but I felt no sympathy. Tears mean nothing if they're born too late. I remember her stepping forward, trying to place a hand on my arm. I recoiled like her touch was acid. "Rick, I never wanted to hurt you." A half sob choked out of her. "I was going to tell you eventually, but the timing. Spare me." My words sliced through whatever excuse she was mustering. "Is that why you keep the birth control hidden? So you won't accidentally give me a real child this time?" She flinched as though slapped. "I didn't, Rick, please." I turned away, heart pounding so hard it felt like it would shatter my ribcage. "Save it," I managed. Then I forced a grim laugh. "Don't worry, I won't fight you for the house. Or for him. You can keep it all." Those words came out numb. She gaped, confusion mooring with relief. She must have thought I was walking out with my tail between my legs. I wanted to tell her so badly how I'd put a clamp on her resources, how everything would eventually sink if she kept trying to support that new life with him. But some part of me wanted her to discover it on her own, day by painful day, each rung of the ladder snapping under her feet. Take the house, the car. Hell, the bills too. Don't say I never gave you anything. Then I paused. "I'm done. I'm leaving." She cried out, "But where will you go?" Her voice cracked, loaded with desperation that felt almost insulting. Her tears had turned into something else. Panic, maybe. "We can work this out. We can fix it." I turned back, pinned her with a stare. "We? There is no we. That's been gone a long time." My tone dropped to a growl. "I've kept silent for too long. This is my turn. You've already taken enough from me. You can't have any more." She stood there, tears streaking her cheeks, trying to sputter some excuse. I left before hearing whatever speech she conjured. Maybe she wanted to explain how lonely she was, or how it was a mistake. Doesn't matter. Nothing, she said, could revive a corpse of a marriage. Once you realize the child you've been raising isn't yours, it changes everything. That's a blow from which no words can recover. I left the house that night. I threw a few clothes into a duffel bag and tossed it in my trunk. It felt surreal, driving away from the place I'd called home for nearly a decade. All I took with me was that watch, my old watch with the note taped on the face. Time does not heal. I wanted to keep it as a reminder, but at the last second, I changed my mind. I turned the car around, parked across the street, and quietly snuck back in. She was in the living room, slumped on the couch, phone in hand, probably calling him, or calling her sister, or calling the police. Who knows? She didn't notice me. I crept to the bedroom, placed the watch on the dresser with the note facing up. A little piece of me left behind, a tombstone for what used to be. Then I left for good. Down the stairs, out to the yard. The headlights cut across the lawn as I backed out of the driveway, and my chest tightened with black despair. I half-laughed again, bitter and hollow. My illusions were gone, replaced by a savage sense of freedom. I had no illusions of fatherhood, no illusions of marriage. It was liberation through destruction. That first night away was an odd mixture of dread and release. I crashed in a motel on the far side of town. The bed creaked. The walls were thin. I could hear neighbors laughing about some trivial nonsense. My eyes stared at the ceiling. She's probably going to call me, text me, beg me to come back. Or maybe not. Maybe she'll run to Damien, pour out her tears. Let him pat her back. Let him father the boy I used to tuck in at night. I discovered a new flavor of heartbreak then, one laced with cynicism. If I'd grown more vicious, I might have revealed everything to that child. Told him, I am not your father, severing the bond in front of him. But I couldn't. Whatever else I'd become, I wasn't cruel enough to break a child's innocence so bluntly. Besides, that child had never asked for any of this. 3 days later, I closed my consulting accounts tied to her ventures. Quietly, methodically, I separated my name from her entire network. My old colleagues confirmed the deals were unraveling. They told me Damien had been trying to salvage them, but he lacked my connections. Good luck to him. Perhaps they'd figure something out. Perhaps they'd both sink. I didn't care anymore. The final door had shut. I did pay one last visit to the house to pick up official documents. She wasn't there. My key still worked, so I let myself in. The place smelled stale, like old coffee and anxiety. In the kitchen sink, dishes were piled up. The trash overflowed. She'd never let that happen before. A single envelope on the counter caught my eye. A letter from some agency regarding her credit line. Denied. My lips curled in a faint smirk. This was it, her new reality. I remember turning in a slow circle, looking at the photos on the wall. There was one with me holding the boy in my arms, the two of us grinning at a baseball game. I felt a hard stab of sorrow in my gut. All that laughter, those memories, manufactured illusions. My anger gave way to something else, a wave of exhaustion. If regrets were tangible, the house would be filled waist-deep in them. But I forced myself to keep going. I rummaged through the folders I needed, stuffed them in my bag, and left. I'd never step through that door again. The days blurred into a muddy mixture of relocation and quiet meltdown. I found a small furnished apartment in the city. It was nothing fancy, just enough for me to have a bed, a shower, a table to eat on. Half the nights I'd stay up, nursing a glass of whiskey, replaying the last decade. I started journaling because I had no one to tell. My parents lived in Florida, content in their retired life. My sister was states away and had her own problems. I was too ashamed to confess to them how thoroughly my wife had played me. So I poured my thoughts into the pages, developing a sort of black humor about it. I wrote lines like, "Glad she left me with no kids to babysit. Turns out I never had one." Or, "Hey Rick, maybe you can open a business. Rent a dad. You've got experience fathering other men's children." That was the shape my grief took. Savage jokes that stung me as I wrote them. But at least it was an outlet, better than punching walls or driving my car off a bridge. Weeks went by. Then one afternoon, my phone vibrated with a text. "Can we talk? Urgent, please." From her. I ignored it. She tried calling. I let it ring. She left a voicemail, voice trembling. "Rick, please, everything's gone wrong. Bills are piling up. I lost the campaign. We might lose. Damien's not. Things aren't the way I planned. He's ill, or I don't know. I need your help. You're good at this. Please call me." Then silence. I played it back once, maybe twice, just to hear the desperation. It didn't make me happy, exactly, but it felt like a door was finally closing on the illusions she'd carried. She'd pinned her hope on a hollow love, a fleeting rush that had no real foundation. Maybe she was discovering that. I didn't feel pity, didn't feel anger. I just felt done. I didn't respond. At some point, I thought about the child. He was innocent in all this. I'd ask myself if I owed him a goodbye, or if that would just complicate everything. But what do you say to a kid who believes you're his father, only to find out you're leaving, permanently. I wasn't even on his birth certificate. She'd never changed it to my name. I told myself he'd be better off with her, or with Damien, if that man had the decency to care for him. The truth is, I was no father. Not to him. Not now. The boy's laughter still haunted me, but I drowned that guilt in the knowledge that staying would only deepen my wound. And then, in the quiet of late nights, I'd record my thoughts, talking to the camera on my phone, as if it were her face staring back at me. I'd try to articulate the anger, the humiliation. Sometimes I'd press the record button and find I couldn't speak for a full minute. Then, in a burst, I'd let out a swirl of curses, biting sarcasm, or cold declarations. Christina, do you realize how small I feel? How worthless? You cut me down, piece by piece, until I was a puppet dancing for your applause. And I hate you for it. I hate me for letting you. Then I'd stop, trembling, and end the recording. That's how I processed it all. And in time, I found a strange acceptance. Another month passed, and my finances stabilized. I considered seeking therapy, but I ended up just reading articles about betrayal and trauma. That was my coping mechanism. Some nights, sleep wouldn't come, so I'd run 5 miles around the city blocks, breath steaming in the cold night air, letting the adrenaline burn away the numbness. I received a final notice that the house deed was now exclusively in her name. That was a small victory. She got the house as promised, though I suspected she couldn't maintain it. I left her everything we accumulated together, except me. That was the only true punishment. She could keep the chairs, the bed, the coffee machine, the memories that would always be stained by her betrayal. She could keep the illusions, if that's what she wanted. But never me, never again. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter from a lawyer representing Christina. In it, she asked for a meeting. Perhaps it was some last-ditch attempt at settlement. Maybe she wanted me to pay spousal support. I nearly laughed. Did she not realize she'd ruined the small chance of that with her constant deceit? The next day, I texted the lawyer. I relinquish all shared assets to her. I want no further contact. He replied politely, mentioning how unusual my stance was. Usually men fight tooth and nail for property or money. But I'd lost more than property. I'd lost who I was in that marriage. Keeping a house or a car wouldn't fix that. Maybe if the child had been mine, I would have fought differently. But he wasn't, so everything else seemed meaningless. I heard rumors from mutual acquaintances. Her business collapsed further. She was scrambling to hold on to the mortgage, to salvage a fraction of her once lavish lifestyle. Damien apparently had health issues, or maybe job issues, or he was just a deadbeat who seduced my wife for a thrill. I never learned the full story. And frankly, I didn't want to. I had my own future to consider. I relocated to a different suburb eventually, a small, quiet place where I started consulting independently. My phone contact list shrank to a handful of trusted colleagues. I cut away anyone who reminded me of the past. Little by little, the seething anger turned into a dull ache, then into a weird acceptance. If I have regrets, it's that I spent a decade believing a lie. But how could I have known? That's what betrayal does. It wears a smile that you trust until it's ripped off like a cheap mask. Sometimes, I talk to myself in the mirror. I say, Rick, you're free. You survived. She can't hurt you anymore. I breathe in, breathe out. I remember a quote I once read. Revenge is about letting go, more than taking. And that's exactly how it felt, like I had to let go of everything, or it would drag me into the same pit she's in. My vengeance wasn't about punishing her with fists or vile threats. It was about walking away and making sure she knew that her world, built on illusions, would crumble under its own weight. I stayed silent for the most part. I let my behind-the-scenes moves unfold organically. I refused to speak to her again. Let her realize each day that I wouldn't return. I wouldn't come home. The phone calls stopped after a while. She got the message. Or perhaps she was too busy dealing with the aftermath. Either way, I was finally alone, for better or worse. And I began to see glimpses of hope in that solitude. With no illusions left to maintain, there was a certain peace in the quiet. Once in a while, I wonder how she's doing, if she curses my name while juggling unpaid bills, or if she's still telling him that I'm some villain who ruined her, or maybe she never mentions me at all. Sometimes the bitterness flares, and I dream of telling everyone the full story, humiliating her publicly. But then I think, what's the point? She's got her own punishment, living with herself. I recall my father's words when I was a kid. Son, never let hate drive you. Let it show you what you value, then set it down. That old man's voice resonates in me. I hate what she did, but I refuse to let that hate consume the rest of my life. If I keep feeding it, I'll never step out of its shadow. That's why I'm recording this. That's why I'm writing it down. Because now it's my turn to speak. For years, I let her define our narrative. No more. I want my side out there, not for pity. God, no, but for release. A final statement to close the chapter. I still have the watch, or rather, I have it in a small box now, retrieved from the dresser the last time I visited. She must have thrown it aside, or maybe she didn't even notice it. The note is still there. Time does not heal. I think that's partly true. Time doesn't fix what happened, but it can create distance, a scab over the wound that's less raw. For me, it's enough. Sometimes, the memory of that first sight, someone else's hand on her waist, visits me in dreams. My chest tightens, and I can't breathe. Then I awake, gasping in the darkness, and realize I'm alone in a new room, a new life. And I almost laugh at the irony that the worst day of my life was also the day I began to see reality for what it was. I'm no saint. I've done my share of questionable things in pursuit of vengeance. But in the end, I walked away with my self-respect battered but intact, carrying only the knowledge that I would never again let someone take me for a fool. She kept the house, the kid, the illusions, if they're even still standing. I got myself. That's the sum total. And I'm here, talking to a camera like an old man reciting war stories. But this is my war. My scars. My final word on the matter. If she's out there somewhere, hearing this, or if you are, dear viewer, listener, or whoever you might be, know this: revenge doesn't have to be a violent reckoning. It can be the quiet severing of chains. The moment you let them keep all the poison and you walk away clean. It's not about winning. It's about leaving them with the truth that they can never shatter you again. So I guess this is goodbye. Goodbye to the man I was, to the illusions I fed, to the fatherhood I thought I had. And goodbye to her, with her cunning smiles and her waist that welcomes other men's hands. Let her keep the memory of what she threw away. Because me, I'm finally done. I might be broken, but I'm free. And that, in the end, is all that matters.